In the last 30 days, I've made over 10,000 reselling second-hand clothes for my bedroom. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can make an extra 1,000 a month following 3 simple principles when it comes to reselling. What is good, people? Now, if you've clicked on this video, then you're probably interested in reselling. Let me guess, you've been scrolling Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, seeing people selling second-hand clothes, seeing vintage bots that guarantee you profit, or the best vintage wholesaler in the UK, and you're wondering, can I do that too? Maybe you're just starting out, or maybe you've purchased from a wholesaler before and you've been burned. Don't worry, I've been there too. Either way, you're in the right place, because in today's video, I'm breaking it all down. How you can make an extra 1,000 reselling second-hand clothes online, and trust me people, it's a lot easier than you think. Now, this video isn't like my usual content. There's no flashy transitions, there's no quick cuts, and there's no music in the background. So, if your dopamine receptors are too fried to sit and watch some long-form educational content, then you might as well click away now. Because, let's be honest, you weren't going to stick with it anyway to make an extra 1,000 a month. Now, you're probably wondering, who am I and why can I teach you? So, here's a little bit about me. My name's Jacob and I own Harvey's House, which is my reselling business. And so far this month in December, I've done over 8k in revenue and I'm on track to hit over 10k. But trust me, I wasn't always at this level. I started just like you, unsure where to start, worried about finding the right supplier and making plenty of mistakes along the way. I wish I had someone back then to give me a clear path, which is exactly why I'm making this video today, for my younger self and for all of you that are serious about getting into this reselling game. Now, before we get into the first principle, I just want you guys to understand how easy it is to make an extra 1,000 profit a month, okay? So, in order to show you, I'm going to break the numbers down and let you see, okay? So, for an example, we'll use me. My average profit per item this month in December has been £17, okay? So, we have £17 profit per item. So, in order for me to make £1,000, how many items do I need to sell? Well, we do 1,000 divided by 17, and that comes out to roughly, some very quick mental maths, 59 items, okay? So I have to sell 59 items at £17 profit in order to make £1,000, okay? So, to make the maths easier, let's round up to 60, okay? And to work out how many items that is a day, we divide that by, well, the average month, we'll say 30 days, okay? So, we do 59, or we say 60 divided by 30, which equals 2. Just ignore that handwriting, okay? So, 2 items a day, that's what you need to sell at £17 profit in order to make 1,000 a month, right? For some context, I sell 15 items a day. And that's just to show you how easy it is to sell 2 items a day, right? I do 15, you could easily do 2. 2 items a day at £17 profit gets you 1,000. That requires very little effort, very little time, and I promise you it is so much easier than you think, right? Now, we can break this down even more. Okay, let's say your profit margins are even slimmer. Let's say you make £10 profit on each item. So, how many items do you need to sell in order to make 1,000 at £10 profit? Well, it'd be 100 items. So, you need to sell 100 items in a month at £10 profit to make 1,000. Okay, let me just tell you, in my first month taking this stuff seriously, I sold 100 items. That just shows you how easy it is again, okay? So, how many items is that in a 30-day month? Well, we do 100 divided by 30, which equals 3.33333 recurring, 3.3 items a day, okay? 3.3 items a day at £10 profit margin. Those are slim profit margins in this game. I'm telling you. You can purchase items at £10 and sell them for £20 to make £10 profit. And let me tell you, if you're buying items for £10 a piece, you better be buying some good items because that is expensive. My average price per piece, per item, is about £5 and I make £17 profit on that. So Making £10 profit on items is not difficult at all. And even at a profit margin as small as £10, you only need to do 3.3 items a day. And I'm telling you guys, that's not difficult. With the correct stock, the correct photos, the correct listings, which I'm going to teach all of you in the next 3 principles, you will be well on your way to selling 3.3 items and even more. I hope now you understand just how easy it is to make an extra 1,000 a month profit reselling. Now that it's been broken into items per month and items per day, you should understand that it is not difficult at all and that it does not require a lot of effort to make an extra 1,000. So I hope you're now ready to learn the 3 principles that are going to bring you success in reselling. Now, let's get into the first principle. But first I want you to understand that these principles aren't some random tips. No, these are the fundamentals of making consistent and predictable money in this game. And if you seriously, and I mean seriously, implement them, learn them, understand them and research them, then I promise you will be ahead of 9 out of 10 people. And I guarantee you will make an extra £1,000 profit in your first month reselling. Now, principle 1 is probably the most important principle I'll tell you today, and most of you will neglect this one, okay? You're probably wondering, tell us who your supplier is, who's your supplier? And don't worry, we will get to suppliers eventually, but there is more to reselling than just suppliers, and that is knowing and understanding your market. You need to know what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and the market surrounding that. Now, you might think that the second-hand clothing market is saturated and that everybody's reselling. But let me tell you, you're living in a vacuum and all the content you consume is niche specific. I'm telling you, second-hand clothing, the market and reselling second-hand clothing is an untapped goldmine and it's going to explode over the next 10 years. This is like finding Bitcoin in 2009. Do you understand how much money is going to come into the second-hand market and how many new consumers are going to come into the second-hand market in the next 10 years? I promise you guys, this is just the beginning. But in order to succeed, you need to know what your customer wants, what problems you're solving for your customers, and what pain points your customers have when it comes to buying second-hand clothing online. Only then can you worry about where to buy clothes and what suppliers to buy from. So, there's 3 questions to ask about understanding and knowing your market. Now, the first question you need to ask yourself is, who are your customers and what do they want? Now, the perfect thing about reselling is, you don't need to niche down because when you sell on a platform, everybody is your customer. Now, back when I started reselling, which was on Depop, Depop was primarily younger people, more trendy younger people, that sort of vibe. Nowadays, everybody is shopping secondhand, especially on platforms like Vinted, which recently have gone very mainstream. There's been documentaries on Channel 4, there's newspaper articles about Paul Mescal selling his secondhand clothes on Vinted, and that in turn has had an influx of very normal people, middle-aged people, no longer trendy young kids or trendy adults, no. Everybody is on Vinted now. And what that does for us, for resellers, is that opens our market even wider. That allows us even more reach than we already have. So you need to keep in mind that you're selling to everybody now. You're not just selling to people your age that like the stuff you like. No, you're selling to people who have a variety of tastes, right? Which allows you to put even more items in your store which have the ability to sell. Okay, and this is a key mistake that I made in the beginning of my reselling career. I saw everything through my worldview, the lens that I see the world in, okay? I believe back when I was 16 starting reselling, and I thought that people only wanted streetwear, designer, sportswear stuff. I want you to drop any preconceived conceptions you have of what you think will sell and what won't sell, because you need to understand that your market is everyone. There's more and more people joining Vinted every single day. I think this month I've sold to brand new accounts more than I've sold to people who have already bought things before, okay? So you need to understand that the market's expanding and it's no longer just trendy stuff, it's normal stuff, and it's stuff you might not necessarily like or want yourself, but other people do, and there is a huge market for it, okay? Now, that leads to the second question of, well, what do they want? Now, people shopping secondhand, there's usually a few reasons people are shopping secondhand. The main reason is, well, affordability, so prices. So that's about having your price point on. And having cheap prices lowers your profit margins, but it can increase your sales. So it's finding the perfect balance. Okay, so people shop for affordability. They also shop to find unique pieces that they can't find in normal stores. Okay, so that's right, unique pieces. So for me, I'll give you an example about unique pieces. I've recently had in, a couple months ago, these vintage 90s, 80s, early 2000s, like super funky, patterned, crazy, bright coloured fleeces. Okay? Now, you couldn't go to the store and buy these because, well, one, they're very old, and two, they're just not made the same way they are anymore. So, I had loads of these, and because they were so unique and different and customers couldn't find them in stores, they got so much interest, and I ended up selling over 240 fleeces at about £20 profit margin per item. So, and that was based on a unique piece. Now, don't get me wrong, popular pieces like Nike and Adidas and Carhartt and Ralph Lauren, all that stuff, that still sells. But you have to open your mind up to unique pieces that you can't find in the store. Okay, so your customers are everyone. And what do they want? They want affordability, and they want unique pieces that they can't find in normal stores. Question 2 you need to ask yourself is, what are their pain points when buying second hand? Okay, so we can rephrase this question into, what is stopping the customer buying your product? Okay, they see your listing, it's at an affordable price, it's a unique piece that they want that they can't get in store and they can't get anywhere else because you're the only one selling it. Why don't they buy it? What stops them? Okay, that is the customer's pain points. What are their pain points when it comes to buying second hand? And there's a few, okay? And you've probably experienced these pain points yourself if you've bought second hand. So their pain points, typically their pain points are quality of the clothes, okay? Sizing, how does it fit? What's the size? Is it true to size? And then typically with the older generation, a little bit of trust comes into play. Okay, how do I know that the buyer is going to send? How do I know that the seller is going to send my item? You know, there's trust. So there's quality, sizing, and trust. And the way we fix these pain points for the customer, we will discuss that in principle 2. Okay, but right now, we need to understand that the customer does have pain points, and those are the quality, size, and trust. You know, does the item actually look like that in real life? How thick is the material? Those sorts of questions and those sort of things. Is there any flaws with the item? All of those things come into consideration when the customer buys secondhand, especially online, because it's very different in person than it is online, okay? And we need to think about it being online. So quality, sizing, and trust. Now, the good thing about this is that when it comes to trust, you're competing against other sellers online, okay? The customer's comparing your listing to other listings and deciding who they trust more, okay? So even if you're selling a unique item, remember from question 1, a unique item that everybody wants, and it's affordable, right? If you lack this quality and you lack sizing, clarity and sizing, and you lack trust, then you're not satisfying the customer's pain points, and they're not going to buy from you, okay? So our goal as the seller, in order to maximize sales, is fixing the customer's pain point by having quality listings, accurate sizing with measurements, and building trust by getting 5-star reviews every time, by satisfying the customer. You've probably experienced it yourself, going to buy something secondhand online, but the quality of the images are rubbish, and you can't tell what colour it is really because the lighting's awful, and you're unsure on the sizing. Is it women's? Is it men's? You're just unsure, and that can really put you off from buying. So think about it yourself. Pain points are quality, sizing, and trust. How do we fix those? And that leads into question 3. How do you solve the customer's pain points? You know, quality, sizing, trust. How do we solve those pain points and make the experience of online shopping, like shopping secondhand online, as frictionless as possible in order to maximize the amount of sales we make? Okay? So, what were the pain points again? It was quality. It was sizing, and it was trust. Now, quality and sizing kind of create trust, but let's talk about it. So quality, how do we solve the pain point of quality? Well, we list items with clear and professional photos, okay? Clear and professional photos, as well as accurate descriptions, okay? So, we portray quality of the item by clear professional photos, okay, with good lighting, highlighting the whole item in its correct colour, along with accurate descriptions listing materials, thickness, any details about the item which are helpful for the customer and is going to make them more inclined to buy the item. Okay? So that's how we solve the quality pain point. Now, sizing pain point. Now, the best way to solve sizing pain points and little as risk as possible is to provide the customer with measurements, okay? Measurements. And this is something I neglected for a while. I wouldn't put measurements in, and then customers would complain about sizing and it would be incorrect, because you'll find that a lot of the time the items you buy, older item, vintage items made in the US, sizing just differs a little bit, especially if you go into women's clothing, which is like, does it work with the numbers or is it small, medium, large? That can often cause a lot of pain points for the customer, right? And we solve that by providing measurements and photos on, okay? Photos of the item on, being worn, if it fits you. There's no point modeling an item if you're a small man's and it's a 3XL man's, you know, it's just going to drown you and it's not really going to show the item. However, if an item fits you and it increases, it improves the way it looks, then I would recommend modeling the item, because that is what I've done in the past and that definitely helps. And I often get questions of people asking, can I see what this looks like on? So if the item fits you, take a photo with it on, model it, okay? Sell it as well as possible. So quality, we solve the quality pain point by accurate, clear photos and an accurate description, okay? We solve the sizing issue by measurements and photos on. And these things essentially both lead to, that was awful, but they both lead to trust, okay? Long term, these things will lead to trust. And that is because when you do start selling your items and the quality is good and the size is correct and the buyer receives the item and they're really happy, then you get left good reviews, and that builds trust over the long term. You can't just build trust like that. It builds, okay? But if you have quality photos, accurate sizing, then the buyer is going to trust that your item is what it is, okay? And that is how you solve the customer's pain points. And I will go into photos and descriptions and sizing in principle too, okay? So you solve the pain points by having good photos, accurate descriptions, providing measurements and photos on, and that builds trust and that converts into salespeople. Okay? So, I hope that you guys have taken principle 1 on board, because this is the most important principle. If you don't understand principle 1, there's no point in learning principle 2 and 3. Okay? So, if you don't know your market, it doesn't matter who your supplier is, because you will just end up buying dead stock and you won't know how to sell it properly. You'll end up sitting on inventory for months, and I've been there. Trust me, I have been there. And you do not want to sit, because you are essentially just sitting on money you have invested into your business, and that is money you can't get back because the items do not sell. So people, I need you to understand principle 1 first. Go back and watch it again if you need to, but this is the most important principle you'll learn today, and that is understanding the market, understanding who you're selling to, understanding the pain points of who you're selling to, and solving those so that you maximize the most amount of sales possible. And I guarantee you, if you learn principle 1 and understand it completely, that's half the battle, and you will be halfway there of making an extra 1,000 a month. So now that we've got principle 1 out of the way, now we can move on to the more fun and interesting principles, like taking photos and descriptions, as well as suppliers. Okay? So let's move on to principle 2. Now, principle 2 is about quality listings. Now, when you've been scrolling YouTube, whenever you're watching this, and you see an interesting thumbnail that catches your attention and a really catchy title that you're like, oh yeah, I'm interested in that, I'm going to click on that. That is essentially what we're doing with quality listings, okay? We are creating a thumbnail and a catchy title that catches the customer's attention, and eventually we're trying to convert that attention into a sale. You know, it might take a few clicks, but the end goal is conversion, okay? So just like you click on a thumbnail, we want the customer to click on our item. Now, what makes a good thumbnail? Well, that's subjective, but what is objective is what makes a quality listing. Luckily for you, 9 times out of 10, you're not competing against other resellers. No, you're competing against other normal people selling their items on the platform, and therefore it is not difficult or hard to stand out from the other sellers. So, let's start with the first point of a quality listing. Now, photos are the most important part of the listing, because 1, it's the first thing the buyer sees when they're scrolling, so it needs to catch their attention and stand out from everybody else's photos. Now, there's a few ways you can take photos. First, which is the way I started out with when I was a beginner, is hanging the item. And I recommend this for all beginners because it's the easiest and it's also the quickest as well. Okay? What you can do is find a room in your house that has good lighting, it has a good light bulb in the lights, lots of bright light and natural light preferably, and a neutral wall where you can put a hook in. You can either, when I first started, put a nail into the wall, which my parents weren't too happy about, but you can also buy little stick hooks which cost a couple £2 from any major supermarket really, and they stick to the wall and you can peel them off at the end and it doesn't leave any marks on the wall, and it provides a hook for you to hang your clothes and basically provide a frame for your photos. So I recommend hanging to start out with. Now, the second way you can take photos, and which you'll see the majority of top resellers doing, is flat lays. And this is what I currently do and what I've moved to. You know, I wasn't the biggest fan of flat lays because I didn't really have the space or the lighting to take quality flat lay photos. But if you have the correct setup and you have some sort of external light like a soft box, or a ring light is probably not good enough, but like a soft box or bright LED lights, then I would recommend flat lays. However, for beginners, complete beginners, first time, then hanging is definitely the way to go. It shows the item the best, 100%. Either way, whatever one you use, you need good lighting. Good lighting is the fundamental of a good photo, okay? So, like I said, in a room with a bright light or as much natural light as possible, okay? And if you don't have that, then I would highly recommend investing in a cheap ring light off Amazon. It would cost you about £20. That's what I did. I started with just natural, like a natural light bulb in my own room, and then the photos were okay. I sold things, but I can guarantee I would have doubled my sales if my lighting and photos had just been better. If you can start with good photos, I promise you it's going to be so much more encouraging than if you're starting with rubbish lighting and you have to figure it out over a couple of years the way I did, okay? So number one is photos and lighting, okay? Natural lighting, or buy a ring light from Amazon, a cheap ring light, and use that, and I promise you it will enhance your photos tenfold. So we have either hanging, which I recommend for beginners 100%, or flat lights for people a little bit more experienced who have a proper lighting setup. I will put photos in of both right now, and those were both my photos. As well as lighting, when it comes to photos, it's important that you put a little bit of effort into making the item look nice. So when, for example, it's hanging, I want you to adjust the sleeves so it sits perfect. Don't just hang it and let it fall. You know, give it a bit of life. Fix the sleeves, fold the sleeves in, make the collar pop. Don't just let it hang and drape on the coat hanger, okay? Put a little bit of effort in, and that can... It's small things like that that can level up your listings, and when you stack all these little 1% changes, that turns into a big change which eventually allows for a sale, okay? So put a little bit of effort into it, fold it, make it neat. Also iron your stuff. Don't be putting up creased, wrinkled clothes. Nobody wants to buy clothes that are not ironed. And thirdly, wash your clothes before you sell them. Essentially, especially if you're buying wholesale, wash your clothes. They're dirty, they're disgusting, they're always creased. So wash the clothes, iron, photograph, make it look nice, and it will level up. Next, let's move on to the second most important thing when it comes for people searching for your items, and that is descriptions. Now, descriptions are essential because when someone searches for your item, you want your item to be at the top of the majority of searches for any order of words that the person puts in, okay? So, for example, if you're selling a black Nike hoodie, okay? If someone's searching for a black hoodie, you want yours to be at the top. If someone's searching for Nike hoodie, you want yours to be at the top. And we do this by using key words in our description. Okay, so in most platforms you have a title, okay, and then you have the description. So, title. For me personally, I always put brand and what the item is. Okay, so if we have, say for example, a Nike hoodie, just a basic Nike hoodie, I will put Nike hoodie. Now, super basic. And then in my description, I will put, first thing I put, size. Let's say for example, XL. And then I will put another dash and say, measurements pictured. And in my photos, I will have a picture of the pit to pit measurement and the length measurement from the neck to the bottom of the hem, okay? Measurements pictured. Make sure the customer sees the measurements, okay? So we have size, XL, and measurements pictured. And then I will write a little blurb, a little bit more detail of this underneath, okay? So for example, if it was a black Nike hoodie, I would write black Nike. Now we can think here, what else, what other words do we have for hoodie. You know, what else could you call a hoodie? You could call it a jumper, a sweater, a sweatshirt, a pullover. You know, there's lots of terms that people might search. Someone might put Nike hoodie, Nike jumper, and you still want your listing to come up because you're still selling a Nike jumper, okay? So what we do is we write black Nike, and the order I put it in is pullover, sweater, jumper. So now we have our item pops up for people searching for Nike pullover, Nike sweater, Nike jumper. Okay? Imagine we didn't have any of these, we only come up for Nike hoodie. So by adding these three key terms that are synonyms of hoodie, we have then popped up for potentially 3 more different searches than we would have before. Okay? Now, let's say we were selling a vintage Nike hoodie, okay, from the early 2000s with the silver tag, okay? I would write vintage Y2K Nike hoodie. I would write vintage Y2K Nike hoodie, adding in a little bit more detail because it being Y2K is a key factor in its selling. Then we'll add it to the title. It's vintage and it's early 2000s, okay? And it's a Nike hoodie. And the same principles apply. So we would still add in pullover, sweater, jumper. However, we've also got vintage and Y2K. Can anyone think of some synonyms for vintage and Y2K? The same principles apply. So I would write black, Nike, vintage and Y2K. We could write old school, retro, Y2K, early 2000s, and sometimes I'll write silver Nike tag just in case people are looking for that. There's no harm adding more. And then I would add pullover, sweater, jumper, okay? And then I would state the condition. I use one of 3 conditions. I use one of 3 conditions, and those conditions are very good used, good used, or fair. Now, very good used, the majority of my items, okay? A very good used item is an item with it's either perfect condition or it has a couple minor imperfections that don't take away from the overall look. Good used condition, there's a few minor marks that you want the buyer to see, okay? And fair condition is usually shit stock that I'm trying to get rid of, and it's not in good condition. You can't lie about it, okay? However, I will say in very good used condition, if it's very good used condition, perfect, I will say no major marks or flaws. Good used condition, I will state the flaw and say, but no other major marks or flaw. And then in fair, I will just say, visible marks pictured. So we have very good use condition, either perfect condition or very minor tiny imperfections that don't take away from the overall look. We have good use condition, there's visible flaws, but it's still good use condition with lots of wear left, so we state the flaw, but no other major marks or flaws. And then we have fair condition, which just basically means it's a shit item, and we just say visible marks pictured, okay? So, there's one more thing in my description. The last thing I'll put in my description is hashtags. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I understand the algorithm and hashtags make all the difference. I don't have a clue if they work. They might not work. But guess what? I put them in anyway because it expands my key terms, okay? I'll put a hashtag in for anything that could be slightly relatable to the item, okay? So, obviously all your key terms, all your synonyms for vintage, Y2K, all your synonyms for hoodie. Don't put brands in that aren't the brand you're selling, because most platforms you can get in trouble for that, and you can get your account deleted because it's false advertisement, okay? It's the only thing I wouldn't recommend. But use all of the key terms like streetwear, sportswear, gorpcore, all those key terms, okay, that someone might be looking for, because all it takes is one person to see your item. They might have not even been looking for it, but you're listing, because you've got the perfect photos, your listing catches their eye and they're like, oh well, I wasn't looking for that, but that looks amazing. And that's how you turn a customer that wasn't even looking for your item into a sale, okay? By having a listing that stands out and a description that has multiple key terms, so when people are looking for items, your listings are always popping up, okay? So, people, if you have good photos and good descriptions, I promise you, your listing will stand out and you will see a notable difference in the amount of sales you get, okay? Like I said previously, you're not competing against other resellers, okay? It would be a completely different story if the market was saturated with resellers. Then you'd have to stand out by having the best product, but that's not the case. All you need to do by standing out is having quality photos and accurate descriptions, because with quality photos and accurate descriptions, you can sell just about anything. I promise you, I've done it myself and I'm speaking from experience. Stuff you think wouldn't sell, I'm telling you, stained stuff, ripped stuff, anything. With quality photos and accurate descriptions, you can sell anything, okay? You need to stand out from everybody else. And honestly, this is the second most important point. Standing out is how you do well on these platforms, especially in these early days of it. Eventually, people might level up their photos and their descriptions, but right now, the best way to stand out from everyone else is not about having unique stock, it's not about having the best stock or different stock or expensive stock. No, it's about standing out with your photos and your listing, because that's where everybody else goes wrong. You see people with amazing items, right? With horrible photos, creased photos, you can't even see the item properly, and it just does not make you want to buy it. I've been there, you've probably been there, you see something and you're just not sold, something's stopping you from buying it. And I promise you, if you look professional, like a store with accurate descriptions, people are more inclined to buy your items, and you're actually able to sell your items for more money compared to other people selling the same items. That's why I'm able to sell my items for a premium. People sell the same items as me, normal people, but because my items are photographed extremely well, have great descriptions, even though they're a little bit expensive, people are willing to spend an extra few pounds on my item because there is trust, and there's quality, and there's accurate sizing. All three of the pain points that people have and consumers have when it comes to secondhand shopping online. I solve those pain points compared to another person, although their item might be cheaper, like we talked about. People want affordability, but often the quality and the trust outweighs affordability. People are not opposed to spending an extra few pounds if they know they have trust and that what they're going to get is going to be accurate to the description, accurate to the photos, and they're going to be satisfied overall. So I cannot understate the importance of a quality listing, especially photos. Descriptions are still very important, but the number one thing is photos. You need to catch the customer's attention, just like a YouTube video would catch your attention, an Instagram reel would catch your attention, or a TikTok would catch your attention. It's the same principle. You're playing with people's psychology, and a quality photo is how you do that. Okay, so people, that's principle 2. It's about standing out through quality photos and accurate descriptions. Now, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. We're moving on to principle 3. We're talking suppliers. Are we ready, people? Let's get into suppliers. Now, principle 3, suppliers. Now, some of you might have skipped here and you might not have even watched principle 1 or 2. So if that's you, I advise you to go back and watch principle 1 and 2 because you're going to fail before you even start when it comes to suppliers. Okay? Now, I want you to think for a second. If you were in my shoes, making 10k a month reselling, and you had worked 4 years on this, finding suppliers, researching suppliers, messaging suppliers, getting ignored, getting sent shit stock, testing multiple suppliers across the UK, spending thousands and thousands and thousands, because I have spent over 6 figures on stock. Would you give out your supplier? Be honest. If you were in my position, would you tell you who your supplier is? So now that you've thought about that and you probably have your answer, I want you to think about it and I'm going to explain it. So if I told you all my supplier and you went to my supplier and let's say you messaged them and you wanted to get in contact and you wanted to buy stuff, well, what would that do for me? So I could, let's say, contact my supplier and speak to my supplier and tell them about this YouTube and that I'm sending loads of people their way. Now, that would be a clever thing to do, and there's a few people out there that do that. You might have seen them if you're into reselling, and you know, there's a few people that say they get their supply from this place when they don't actually, or there's a few people that say they get their supplies from one place when they don't actually, and obviously they're in relationships with the supplier to send them customers, and they'll be making a percentage off their conversion of whoever uses their code. You know how it all works, but those suppliers are not where those people started and where those people make the most money. So sure, I could tell you who my supplier is, but then what do I get from that apart from less stock for me? So instead of telling you my supplier, what I will do is I'm going to tell you how to get started and where you can find suppliers yourself. I'm not going to tell you my exact supplier, but I do have a list of the best UK suppliers that I have used in the past and still use now and again to this day on certain items, okay? So, but before we get into any list about UK suppliers and wholesalers, I want you to understand that wholesalers is the last step that you should be going to, okay? Before you even touch wholesalers, because wholesalers is a risky game, a very risky game where you can lose a lot of money if you're not careful and you don't know what you're doing. So before we even talk wholesalers, I want to tell you my story about how I got started with stock and with supply, okay? Now, as much as you don't want to hear it, I'm going to tell you anyway. Start with what you have. Now, I'm telling you to start with what you have. And what I mean by with what you have, just closing your cupboard that you do not wear anymore, because that's how I started. And what that does is that gives you a taste of this game without investing any capital at all. Because you can figure out how to take photos, how to make accurate descriptions, you can understand what sells, you can understand how the platforms work, all with no expenses, and you're just taking pure profit from the items you sell. So any items that you don't wear anymore, or you've had sitting in your cupboard for ages that you're unsure about, list them, okay? Follow the steps, follow principle 1 and principle 2, fix the pain points, take quality photos and accurate descriptions with the method I gave you, okay? And start with what you have and see how you find it. How it feels to make money online for the first time, and what it's like taking photos and how difficult it is, and get used to that. And then with that money, you can then think about maybe spending money on stock, okay? But number one, like I did, okay, for my first 30 sales, I think I started with things I had in my cupboard that I didn't wear anymore, old clothes that didn't fit me anymore, okay? And ask your parents as well, ask your siblings, ask about if anybody wants old clothes sold for them. And what it does, it allows you to practice, and it allows you to, and it gives you a taste of this game, you know? There would be nothing worse than ordering from a wholesaler, spending money, and then realizing you hate this. You hate taking photos, you hate listing, you don't know how to package anything, you don't know how to send it, you don't know where to send it, and then you're just sitting on this stock that you don't want to do anything with. So my number one advice, as much as you don't want to hear this, okay, is start with what you have, okay? Now, if you're past that stage and you've already sold what you have in your cupboard and you made a little bit extra money, now this is where I advise you to start investing the money you make, okay? Now, my second piece of advice for suppliers and stock. So after you've started with what you have and you've sold your own stuff, there was no risk involved. The next step adds a little bit of risk, but it's still very low risk. And we're not talking wholesale suppliers yet, okay? My next piece of advice and where to get stuff from is charity shops and car boot sales, okay? Now, I won't lie, charity shops are not what they once used to be. Prices are very expensive, but don't get me wrong, you can still get a good few bargains in charity shops. Just the other week, I picked up 3 leather jackets for about 30 quid total, which I doubled my money off of selling just one, okay? So I still pick stock up from charity shops now and again. If I'm passing by, I'll have a look. It's not where I get all my stock, but it is where I get, and did get, a good amount in the past. So, charity shops. Not what they once used to be, but still a very good place for stock, and you can still pick up bargains. You do need to go often and to lots of different ones, but if you live in a populated city, as long as you don't live in the middle of nowhere, there's charity shops near you, I promise you, okay? And you can find very, very good deals in charity shops. Even though prices have been shot up, there is still money to be made, and that is where I started, okay? Next is car boots, and car boots are a level above charity shops. If you can find a good car boot, you won't even need a wholesale supplier. I promise you. You can have enough stock and inventory to make 1,000 a month purely from charity shops and car boots, okay? Unfortunately for me, I do not have many car boots near me, and so I've not been big on car boots. However, there was a stage a couple summers ago where I was going to a car boot once a week. I was picking up, you know, maybe £200 worth of stock every week, okay, that I was selling on for £200, and I was getting it cheap, £1, £2. That's for what car boots do. You get good stock that you can sell for 20 quid for £1, £2, you know. Look at that profit margin. If you get a thing for £1 and you sell it for £20, you just made £19 profit. It cost you £1, okay? For example, a car boot, not this summer, but last summer, the one I was just talking about, I found a Stone Island jumper, a Stone Island crew neck jumper just like this with a Stone Island badge for 50p. Yeah, that's right, 50 pence. A Stone Island crew neck for 50 pence. And yes, it was real, and I sold it for £60 about a week later. I made £59 and 50 pence profit. Insane, you know? You know how the difference that would make every month to reaching £1,000? It's one sale, okay? 50p Stone Island, sold it for £60, and that's from car boots. So do not sleep on car boots or charity shops, people, okay? Because both are absolutely enough to get you to 1,000 a month, okay? That's exactly how I started. And the thing with charity shops and car boots are they're also extremely low risk, okay? You're buying individual items at an individual price. You might spend £10 on 10 items at a car boot, or you might spend £10 on 2 items in a charity shop, right? But you select the items and you're only buying one. The thing with wholesalers is, depending on the wholesaler, you need to buy in a significant quantity to get it for a decent price, okay? You need to really minimum 30 items at like £5 a piece. So sure, you might find a few great items in your wholesale bundle, but you've got £150 worth of items. It's not just £5, £5 or 10 items for £10. Do you understand? There is so much more risk involved with wholesale. Now, there are some wholesalers that offer, the reseller starter bundle that charge about £15 an item. Let me tell you, that is not worth it, and avoid those at all costs. That is a money grab for wholesalers. Wholesalers are in the business wholesale. It's in the name. Large quantities. They're not shops. They're not shops. They're not resellers. And let me put you on, guys. Most wholesalers have a reselling account as well, so you're not even getting the best stock. Most wholesalers keep all the good stock for themselves and sell it on their platform. There's only a few wholesalers in the UK that don't resell as well. So keep that in mind when you're buying, okay? Why would the wholesalers not keep all the good stuff and sell it individually if they know they can get £70 to £100 for an item? Do you know what I mean? You're getting the leftovers that they don't want to deal with. So this is the problem with wholesale. You need to find a wholesaler that is untouched. And the wholesale market it can be complex, okay? And in a future video I can break down how it all works. The question of, well, where do your wholesalers get their stock from? And I understand that. I've got documents with how the hierarchy works, essentially, where it all comes from, the top exporters, where the majority of the UK wholesalers get their stock from. I've done a bit of research, I understand the market, I know where these top wholesalers get their stock from, and eventually I will move on to that level. I'm just not quite at the output to be able to order tons and tons and tons of clothing at the moment. So that's what I'm working towards, but in a future video I can break down the whole wholesale market and where it all comes from and who the top exporters are and where all the UK wholesalers get their supply from. Now, back to the video and back to principle 3 is, so you've sold your own stuff, you move into charity shops, you move into car boots, and if you don't really have that in your area and that's not hitting your 1,000 a month, which it can easily hit your 1,000 profit a month, car boots and charity shops, then, and only then, do we talk wholesalers. And before we go into wholesalers, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you go and spend your money on wholesalers because you can easily lose it, okay? I want to put the risk out there. There is a risk. However, at the same time, with a little bit of effort, the worst case scenario that happens is you make your money back from wholesalers. But nobody wants to make their money back. We want to make profit. And this is what I'm here to teach you. I'm here to teach you how to make an extra 1,000 a month. And that is why we're going to talk wholesalers. And I'm going to put you guys on to make sure you don't lose money and you don't get burned by shit wholesalers like I did when I started. Okay? Now, this is what you've all been waiting for, wholesalers. It's this romanticized portion of the business and reselling and getting your bail, and it's so, wow, I order bales from wholesales and it's this whole thing. But no, ordering wholesale is messy, dirty, and the thing with wholesalers is you need to understand a little bit about the market to pick the best wholesaler and prices. So typically, prices can range from, well, I've bought stuff as cheap as £2 a piece, I've paid up to £12 a piece for certain things. So there's a few forms of wholesale as well. So you can order bales, or you can hand pick. Now, bales is definitely the riskier choice. However, it's cheaper. And now you can hand pick, but the thing with hand picking is, well, I don't really have any wholesalers in Scotland. There's not many wholesalers in Scotland, and I don't really want to travel to hand pick every time I need stock, okay? And also with hand picking is it's more expensive because you're selecting the items. So you need to weigh the two. If you're a beginner and you've got a wholesaler near you and you're willing to spend a little bit more extra money, I would recommend hand picking because then you know exactly what you're getting. But you need to know principle 1. You need to know the market, you need to know what sells, you need to know what your customers are looking for before you can make sensible hand-picked decisions. There's no point hand-picking, paying a premium price and picking shit stock that you're not going to sell. You've paid extra and it's not going to sell. You'd have been as well buying a bale at a cheap price and getting shit stock. At least you didn't spend too much money on it. Do you know what I mean? So that is why principle 1 is so important, and as well as principle 2, because if you don't put a quality listing out, it's not going to sell no matter how good the stock is. This is why wholesalers is principle 3 and not principle 1. So we have bales and we have handpick, ranging from anywhere from £2 to £12 a piece. Honestly, nowadays, the best way to find a wholesaler is on Instagram. They're all on Instagram, you probably get ads from them, and they're all roughly the same, and the majority of them do get their stock from the same place, so what you're going to get is kind of the same. Okay, there's definitely a few expensive ones who do put out good quality. I won't lie, they will send you good quality stuff, but you will pay a premium. There's also expensive ones that send you shit stuff that I've used before, and then there's really cheap ones that, you know, some of their stuff's shit, but some of their stuff's good. It's about knowing what's good and what's not as good. So, my biggest recommendation when it comes to wholesalers is, well, 1, doing your research. Firstly, look into every wholesaler that pops up. Search on Google, vintage wholesalers. Search on Instagram, wholesalers. All of that, find wholesalers, look through their account. Do they look trustworthy? Do they look like they have good stock? Look at their bale openings, look at their website, look at their prices, compare those prices to other prices, compare the quality of the items to other items. How do they describe it? What's their returns policy? All of these things are worth taking into consideration, right? Compare prices and understand. If something's too cheap, is too good to be true, then it's too good to be true in terms of prices, okay? Sometimes it is worth paying a little premium to get better quality stock. Now, luckily for you, I've spent the past 4 years testing different wholesalers across the UK, and I'm happy to give that list out and recommend the best beginner-friendly wholesalers. However, I'm not going to name drop any suppliers on YouTube. I don't want people risking their money and just going into it blindly just because of something I've said, and I'm also not giving out free advertisement, okay? Instead, what I've done is I've created a free reselling group. Yes, free. I'm not trying to sell you anything at all, okay? That already has members in it making money, okay? And so what I want you to do, if you want to join the free group, I want you to give me a message on Instagram. I'll put my ad up here. Give me a message on Instagram. Tell me that you came from the YouTube video and that you want to join the group. And when you do join the group, I'll personally send you a list of beginner-friendly UK suppliers that you can use and almost guarantee that you make profit on every single item, because these are suppliers that I still use to this day, okay? So if you're serious about this and you want to join the group, then give me a message on Instagram. I've put the link up here and the link's in the bio as well. Okay, give me a message, let me know, and I'll get you added and I'll send you across that list as soon as possible. So we're coming to the end of this video, and if you're still watching, then I promise you, you're in the top 1% of people, and I guarantee that you're already halfway there to making 1,000 extra profit a month. Okay, now we covered a lot today, but I want you to remember the 3 key principles. You know, principle number 1 is about understanding your market. You need to know who your customer is, what their pain points are, and how you can solve that. Without understanding that, it doesn't matter who your supplier is, it doesn't matter what stock you have. If you do not understand how to solve the customer's pain points, they're not going to buy your items. Okay? Now remember, these pain points are the quality of the items, the sizing, and trust. Okay, and we solve those problems by principle number 2, and that is quality listings. Okay, good photographs and accurate descriptions make a world of difference, and it's not difficult to stand out because you're competing against other normal people with blurry photos and rubbish descriptions. Okay, and finally, principle 3. I know you guys want to get into the wholesale game, but trust me, do it properly and you will maximize your profits. Start with what you've got to provide you with that initial fund, then move on to charity shops and car boots, which in themselves can take you to £1,000 profit a month. Okay, they're low risk, high reward, and only then, once you have the money to spare and you don't mind losing that money, then you move into wholesale. And I cannot recommend enough that you join our free reselling group that already has members in it making money. And if you join the group, I'll give you a list of all the top UK suppliers that are beginner friendly and guaranteed to make you profit on every single item for a very, very good price. Okay? I'm not affiliated with anyone. This is unbiased information, and it's all suppliers that I've tested and still use to this day. So if you're interested in being part of a community of like-minded resellers, all at the start of their journey, and you want advice and help from me on every aspect of reselling, then then drop me a message on Instagram. I'll put that at here. Links are also in the description. I would appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button if you want to learn more, because I'm going to be dropping a video every week giving you guys tips on how you can improve your resale and how you can make money. Eventually, I'll scale it up to how you can do 10k a month, okay? But right now, I want you to go and make that extra £1,000 profit a month, and I will see you guys in the next video.